Hello and welcome to Guest Talks, where transformation meets conversation. I'm your host, Maggie, and I sit down with inspiring healers, coaches, and change makers who have managed to turn their life's obstacles into their stepping stones. Together, we explore their journeys, the lessons they've learned, and how now they help others to grow. My guest today is a doula, a shaman, and a superman and my dear friend Becky Sherman. Welcome.
Hello, hello.
Welcome, Becky. I am so excited to have you today. I know our conversation will probably go into many, many different things, but
Always.
I have a feeling it will be anchored around what it is, what it means to be a woman, how it is to love your body and love yourself unconditionally. Because as women, many of us have this journey. It's a journey to get to that point,
Mhm.
and many of us might not even be there yet. So I'm very excited to have you and to speak to you about those very important topics. And I would like to start about asking you, what was your relationship to your body growing up? So let's just go deep into into
Perfect.
let's not start slow. Let's just go right in there. What was your
Just how
relationship?
I like it.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
just how I like it. No small talk, just get to the crust.
Yes.
So, as a very small girl, I was taught that my body was gross and shameful and that I was to hide it at all costs. I was to never ever show my body. Um, I was taught that if I showed my body, that I would make the boys around me lust. And this is called the purity culture that came out of the evangelical church in the 90s. So if you were raised in the 90s, even if you weren't raised in church, this still affected you because it was so pervasive. And the teaching was that if you showed any kind of skin, you would make the males in your life lust sexually for you. So it was your job to keep it under wraps, literally, to keep it under clothing so that no man would ever look at you and think sexually. Well, the problem with that is that it is meant that ideology is meant for older people who are sexual, you know,
Yeah, I was
and
about
it's
to ask,
also
so how old were you when this teaching
so
was already put
yeah,
on you?
so it's flawed at an older age as well, which it's not appropriate for older people as well. But it trickled down into my age group. And I remember the first time that I was ashamed of my body. I was 4 years old. My aunt was going to pick me up for the swimming pool, and my older cousin was going to be there. And we were going to have a little swim party at the pool. And I was trying to devise a plan because I had a swimsuit on, and I was trying to figure out how do I get from the side of the pool into the water without anyone seeing my body. So I was conflicted about like how do I get out of the car? Like I have a t-shirt and shorts and a towel. How do I get all of the swimming gear, all of the cover-ups off before anyone could see my skin? And then I was just going to stay in the water the whole time. And that was my plan, and I was about 4. So this evolved through my preteen life, and then the church teachings began to be really rigorous about the time I was in about 4th grade. So I would have been 9 or so when the teachings were really starting to get rigorous about never showing skin, and never talking to boys, and then having this really conflicted relationship between comfort and modesty and dressing for the occasion, because we would have swimming pool parties for church, but the women had to wear shirts and shorts in the pool instead of just their swimsuits. So by the time I was in middle school, I felt like my body was just disgusting. So I didn't translate this into a religious teaching. I translated into myself. I must be gross.
Yeah,
I
you
must be,
internalized it. Yeah, if you feel that
I
way,
must
then
be
it's something wrong with you. Yeah,
that I was ugly and that I was fat and that I was gross, like dirty, maybe, because like So my disordered eating started in middle school. That's the first time that I had was it called epinephrine to lose weight, whatever that drug is. Now it's outlawed in the United States.
I have no idea.
Um, fen is what they call it. So epinephrine. I can't
So
anyway.
middle school, so how old were you?
I was about 13.
Okay.
The first time I started diet pills, and that's also the first time that I found myself binge eating and then going through long periods of restriction where I wouldn't allow myself to eat for weeks, other than like being desperate and eating like an apple or sitting at dinner and my parents making me eat. So I would like binge for 2 or 3 days and I would eat all the stuff. And then I would go through like 2 or 3 weeks of not eating as my punishment because I thought if I was too fat, I was not of value. That I must be dirty and gross and fat and ugly. And then going through periods of time where I would punish myself for existing. So it all kind of just was this cycle that I went through and through and through and just, you know, rinse and repeat over and over again.
Wow, that is not a great place to be in as a young lady. I do have a follow-up question on this 4-year-old memory that you have. Was this something the way you felt? Because it speaks a lot to already programming, right? That even before we have the capacity to even understand what's going on, we already know that we should behave a certain way or we shouldn't behave a certain way. Apart from the fact that, you know, we can't comprehend. You don't know what sexuality is when you're 4. You don't know what attraction is. Those things don't even come into your mind until closer to puberty, which is, yeah, it's a decade away, you know, or
Right.
years away. But you already had this knowing, and this programming was already ingrained in you that you should be covering, that you should be doing and acting a certain way. So I just wonder if you do remember, um, was it something that when you were going to the school, someone said something to you, or was it already what you had the woman in your environment speaking about, and you just, you know, took it upon you? Because as kids, we are sponges, right? So we observe the adults because we want to be like them, and they're like, oh, if they act this way, then I need to act that way, then they will love me, and then I will be accepted and all that. So was there a specific thing that someone already told you, or was this exactly what I'm saying, just observing other women in your environment and being like, this is what I need to be?
I think it was more of environmental Easter eggs where it was not a specific thing that was told to me,
Yeah.
but it was like these little snippets that I gathered about myself from, and you know, through those elementary school ages, so like 5 to 9, 5 to 10, I have distinct memories of my parents, my grandparents, my Sunday school teachers telling me when something wasn't appropriate at a young age. So before I had developed, I do have distinct memories of, you know, my grandpa telling me that I needed a modesty panel in my Sunday dress because it was below my collarbone, so that's immodest. I remember my dad making me change shorts and skirts that were above mid thigh. Anything above mid thigh was considered scandalous. So I do have memories of that. I wasn't allowed to wear a 2-piece swimsuit, you know. So those kinds of things I remember between the 5 years old and 10-year-old range happening quite regularly.
Wow.
So I would say both.
Okay. Well, it must have been very confusing as well, because then we hit puberty. That's the time when we all want to experience romantic love of some kind, you know, like it's not necessarily like these days kids already kind of like do more things much younger, but like back in our time, maybe we were a little bit more
Yeah.
slowing down, easing in and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But there's always this innocence at the beginning, or we would like to
Mhm.
think that there's this innocence in us before we explore for ourselves, and everyone is not available, everyone is ready at a different time, right? Like you may be ready at
Mhm.
16, someone may be ready at 20, and there's no right or wrong. You should just know yourself and know what you want. But I'm thinking, if you already had been conditioned to like not like your body, and then you hit
Mhm.
puberty, so there must have been feelings of confusion, because you were like, well, I want to maybe love my body, I want to be attractive to a man, but on this side you had this like, but you can't be, or you need to just do it on their terms, not on your terms, or whatever you
Yeah.
do is kind of for them, like,
Right.
so how was that for you? How was this navigating this confusion?
Well, it only got more confusing. Um, I I look back at pictures and I was about the same size as my peers, but
Mm,
by that point, I had body dysmorphia, and where I felt like I was at least 3 times their size. I didn't feel at all like I was my peers, like I was appropriate. I was
mm,
always on the chunky side is what I would say. But I look back at pictures and I mean, I'm pretty comparable to my peers. I looked like all the other girls, but the dysmorphia in my mind was
mm,
immense. Um, I had a very, very deep distrust for my body. And at this point, I had a distrust of the system. So I knew that if I talked to my parents about sexuality, it would be an absolute nightmare for me.
mm,
And I knew that if I even talked to my parents about like my period starting or having like sexual urges, that was a no go. Not because they would be embarrassed to talk about it, but because it would have been a sinful action. It would have been sin to have a sexual urge. And I did not have the ability to, the cognitive ability at that age to separate sexual desire from sexual deviancy. And so in my mind, whenever I had any kind of desire, I felt like I was sinning.
mm.
Um, and then my body image along with that, like anytime I would have any kind of sexual arousal, I felt like it was sin. So I shut it down, sometimes not, and then I would have to repent for any kind of like self pleasure or any kind of arousal. I would repent for all of those things. And then I had a very pivotal moment in the cusp of my puberty years. I was 15 and I had gained the attention of boys at this point, and I knew that felt good, and I knew that I was attracted to males, so I knew that much about my body. Um, but I didn't understand, it was not an open conversation. I was just not allowed to talk to boys. And I was on a band trip with my high school marching band where there were a lot of parent volunteers that were there and lots of safety measures in place. But I found myself in a room full of boys who
Mm.
were giving me attention. And then all of a sudden, the room was completely emptied out, except for myself and one other boy. And I was like, oh, it's time to go. And he was like, not you. You're not going. And I can explain in more detail, but that's when I was raped. I was 15 and I was raped in a hotel room away from home. And because I was so entrenched in the shame of my body being violated, the shame of like, what if I got in trouble? And I'd heard the commentary before in my own home that, when a woman was raped, my parents would say, was she drunk? What was she wearing?
Your
Why was she
parents, the
there?
society, everyone else would ask questions about you before they ask one fucking question about him.
Yes. So that was already in my brain, and that was the language surrounding
Mm,
rape. So if it was ever on the news or it happened in our community, it was always like, well, she was being dumb. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have safety. I didn't have physical safety. And now my shame was at like an all-time high. Like, how did I let myself be in this position? And how dirty and disgusting I felt afterwards.
Mm.
So that was a pivotal moment. And as I've processed through that moment as an adult, I now see that the true violation, my body was violated. That is a true violation. But the secondary violation that made it worse was that I couldn't tell my parents.
The
And
programming already imposed on you from a young girl was the biggest violation, right? Because you were like,
and
have to
I
say,
knew if I talked to a school counselor or one of my best friend's parents, I knew if I talked to them, it would get back to my parents. So the option of getting help and being able to process through the physical violation became a soul violation.
mm,
I was not safe to get the help I needed. So I locked it away in a box and I just shoved it down deep. And that trauma came out even more in my body dysmorphia, in my binge eating, in my times of when I would punish my body. So there are times in my life when I'd be up 20 pounds and then down 20 pounds and up 20 pounds and down 20 pounds. And, I didn't associate that eating, that disordered eating with my physical trauma. And I did not associate it with my soul trauma that I had received from not having a safe place. As I got married when I was 20, to my high school sweetheart, and it was ironically or not so ironically, I met him the day after I was raped. And he was the safest, kindest, most gentle boy I had met. And I just glommed onto him.
hello,
And
attachment.
I attached hard to this man who was very kind to me and very nice to me. And he was appropriate with me. He wasn't inappropriate. He wasn't gross. And we, minus a little bit here and there, were together from that moment.
Mm.
We dated and we got married. I was 20. He was almost 22 when we got married. And we were married for 20 years. So that trauma that happened to me shaped the rest of my life pretty much through age 38, 39. We got divorced when I was 40. So the marriage years were steeped in the church. And that's the short story. I drowned myself in the church. And I was a servant of the church. And that could be a whole different podcast, what that looked like. But they call them trad wives now, traditional wives. And I was trying my darndest to be a trad wife for about 18 of those years.
Mm. And
So
now
that's the short story.
with your healing, I like that. Well, first of all, I'm so sorry that this has happened to you, and thank you for sharing this with me. I wasn't sure whether we got to go there, but we went there.
It's
I
integral.
can handle
It's
any
crucial.
of course, you're like healed enough to talk about it. So, and it's important to talk about it. It's important to talk
Mhm.
about it because statistics or not,
Yes.
there's so many women out there that
Yes.
still live with that shame. And
Yes.
this shame is never theirs to carry. This shame is
Right.
something that on some level, I think all of us women already feel, even if it didn't happen to us, because it was immediate. Like as soon as this happened to you, you already knew. I am not going to tell anyone because my parents cannot know, because I can't do this to my family. I can't be questioned. I can't, it's just the whole village is going to talk. It's just going to ruin the whole life. You didn't just come up with those things out of nowhere. They were already in you programmed in you because of the way the society worked, because of the way people talk, because of the things that you observed. And
Yes.
I think that's an important part of healing as well. And I love that you said that there was a physical trauma and there was your soul trauma,
Mhm.
because that is true. Your not only was your physical body traumatized and attacked, because whether you were froze or you tried to do something to protect yourself, whatever you did,
Yeah.
whatever the response was, you're still going to probably hate yourself for it, but because you still didn't do enough, right? And that's just the
Mhm.
physical body.
That's
But
just the physical part.
that's just the physical body that you can, so then, but then just that physical body then led to your even more eating disorders and even more
Yes.
hating your body. Because if we cannot talk about what happened to us, if we cannot go and seek the help that we need, then we're going to
Yeah.
have to logically make sense of why this happened. So it's easier to hate your body and be like, well, this is your fault, you did this to me. If my body looked different, then it didn't happen. Like there's this book called The Hunger by Roxane Gay, and she was gang raped when she was a kid, and then she put all of this weight because she that was her coping mechanism. So that's actually a
And
very
it's also a societal
oh yeah.
byproduct of the 90s, and we're still there, where if you're
Mhm.
not stick skinny, you're not beautiful. So there was a psychological element that I was dealing with, that if I am plump and fat and curvy,
Curvy
men
and
don't want that.
female-like, which I would call, yeah, yeah.
Well,
Mm.
that's not true,
Yeah, that's not
but
what we've been told. Yes, of
that's
course.
what
When we
that's
were
what the
growing
weight
up,
loss products,
yeah,
and the magazines and the TV is showing us that only skinny is pretty.
yes.
So by gaining weight, I was no man is going to lust after me if I am all of these things that society says I'm not supposed to be. Then no man will ever want me again. And I had my then husband who wanted me, and that's all I cared about.
Mm.
And he was attracted to me, and it was so funny. I wouldn't translate that to other men being attracted to me. I thought it was just him
Mm. Mm.
because of society. But I could hide
But you
behind
were
my
kind of
fat.
also told, probably, there was all the other religious stuff as well.
Oh yeah.
So you shouldn't
Oh
even
yeah.
dare to hope other
Yeah.
men would be attracted to you, because that would be a sin in
Yeah.
itself as well. So there's all that
Yeah.
as well.
Yes. So
So
there was that element as well. I have had 4 children, and I reached personal max weight with each one. And then I reached my personal max weight while not pregnant twice.
mm,
So if I added up all the pounds I've ever gained or lost, it would be hundreds of pounds. And my body has gone up 60, down 40, up another 60, down 80, up 20, down 40. So in my lifetime, I have lost and gained, I mean, between 50 pounds at least 4 times, if not 75. And I've lost 100 pounds twice. So, like, my poor body doesn't know if it's coming or going. And right now, so 20 years of marriage and then a divorce. And now I'm in a spot in my life where I don't have constant cortisol hit.
mm.
No one is arguing with me. I mean, I have my life stressors because I have 4 children and I have a business and I have a life, but it's not that hardcore. Am I safe? I know that I'm safe. I know that I'm
You
okay.
healed your trauma, right? You started to
I've
unpack
worked,
what happened
yes,
and work through a
yeah,
lot of
and we'll back
things.
up, and I'm sure we'll back up and talk about that part
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
But in this part of my life, I am still frustrated that my body cannot let go of the weight I would like it to let go of.
Mm.
And so I'm in a whole different level of like self-love and self-acceptance, because I truly feel safe and I feel loved and I feel cared for. Now I just have to let my body know that. And so that's kind of what I'm working on currently is, I've lost, oh, dozens and dozens of pounds many times. I know how to do it. And I've always done it in an unloving way.
Mm.
Food restriction to the max, working out to the max, which means after 4 months of doing that, I might lose 40 pounds, but I'm also going to be fatigued and my body does not trust me
Yeah,
anymore.
that is not the way. Yeah, it is not the way.
My body's like, I'm holding on to this fat because I don't trust you, Becky. So right now I'm in a like trusting my body. I'm eating whole foods. I'm eating fresh fruit as much as I can in Nebraska. But the amount of food that I'm eating is supporting the amount of workout that I do. So I'm not cutting corners. I'm supporting my body on a cellular level because I want my body to trust me again. And hopefully that, will bring some of those pounds off. It's hard to run at the weight that I'm at, and I love running. So it's been a little bit, it's sad that I can't do what I want quite yet comfortably. But I think the most important thing right now is not the weight loss or the muscle gain. It is the self-trust that I'm not
I
going to
think it's
starve
also the
my body.
self-love. Yes.
Yeah, I'm not going to
Yes,
starve my body.
self-love is very important. Well, you look beautiful. You look
Oh,
beautiful. You're an amazing
thank you.
woman, and
Thank you.
you already know the answers. I know you know the answers. I would just add that it's not just about trusting your body. Your body will start
Mhm.
trusting you the moment you love on the body.
Yeah.
Acceptance is number one step
Mm.
for any journey that you're embarking on.
Yes.
So, and
Yes.
I obviously with your history with that, it's sometimes it's easier to come with that hatred
Yeah.
or blaming or something. But
Mhm.
I'll always like to see it, anything that happens to us, as what is this trying to teach us? And I am more than certain that as soon as you be like, you know what, I love this body for as long, because even completely different example, but it was similar lesson I had to learn through my knee. It
Yes.
just didn't want to heal, and it didn't want to heal, and
Yes.
I was just so
Yep.
upset with myself. I internalized everything. Oh, I'm not doing enough, or I'm not, even though I was doing exactly what I was meant to, but it just didn't budge. It just
Right.
didn't budge, and I was 2 years in agony and
Mhm.
blaming myself for what the
Mhm.
hell is wrong with me, that everyone has 6 to 9 months of recovery, and here I am on the second, third year, and it's like we're
Right.
still not getting any fucking closer to having my leg back. So I
Mm.
finally got upset with myself and be like, okay, I can't do what I'm doing. It's clearly that there's an answer somewhere else. And that's when it occurred to me that how about I just love where I am right now, because at the end of the day, do I know that my leg's gonna, I hope my leg's gonna heal, but do I have any guarantees? No, I do not. So
Right.
what if I could try this new approach of just loving my body as it is and being
And
appreciative
there's an
for so
element of
many other things,
acceptance. Yeah, there's an
so
element
many
of
other things that your
acceptance.
body is doing for you, except
Yeah.
for, so it's hard, and it's the conditioning, and it's the
Mhm.
programming, and it's the limiting beliefs, it's our
Yeah.
wounding as well showing up in those things, so it's all wrapped up in just more than
Mhm.
one thing. But that just goes to show how important the unconditional love is, and it's another big
Right.
topic as well, because most of us also haven't been given unconditional love or taught what it is
Right.
to love unconditionally. So
Yeah.
I have most
Yeah.
definitely taken my body for granted. And
Mhm.
I was also overusing it. I was fighting like crazy.
Yeah.
I was not paying attention to my small injuries. So there had to be a major surgery to stop me from taking advantage of my body, because I
Right.
couldn't just be like, oh, because you take things for
Mm.
granted. You take things for
Yeah.
granted until they're taken away from you. And then you're like, oh,
Right.
okay,
Right.
so that's not
Yeah.
given. That's not something I can always count on, like this was a big surprise for me. I was like, oh, okay. So I need to learn
Yeah.
how to walk at the age of 38 or whatever I was, like what
Yes.
the hell? Um, so we've talked a lot about that journey, and I know that you well, I don't know which well, I mean, I know doula probably came first before you started doing some shaman work as well. I
Yes.
don't think you want to touch upon both, but I wonder, has being a doula and becoming a doula? Because to me, you definitely became a doula because that was also connected with the whole journey with your body and the whole journey with everything that you've experienced.
Mhm.
How has that shaped you? How has that helped you love yourself? How has that helped you empower women? Because you're really empowering women through your work. So maybe speak to that. Like, has there been a connection between your body and helping women with
Mhm.
delivering the babies?
Yeah. I have been a doula for almost 18 years now. So it's been a long time.
Mm.
And I was allowed to be a doula because I didn't have a boss that was a male, because my husband was technically still over me in authority. So
Mm.
it was a job I could actually do. Um, and it turns out
Lucky
that I was
you.
pretty gifted in it. Uh, I didn't know this until much later in my career. So I have had over 300 babies now. And I would say the first half of those babies were born before I knew this about myself.
Mm.
I didn't know about empathy. And I didn't know that I was using my body to feel other people's bodies, in like a tuning fork way. So they would go, and my body would go, and they would go at the same frequency. Well, I didn't understand what was happening, but I would be in a birth and I'd be like, oh, my head, I have such a bad headache. So I would
Mm.
say to the mother, I need you to drink some water. Do you need some lavender on your neck? Does your head hurt? And the mother would be like, my head is killing me. I didn't have a headache. She had a
I think it's a
headache.
bit more than empathy, but yeah.
It
Weaving the shaman in there in a
a
minute.
little bit of a shaman there. I didn't realize what I was doing. I didn't realize that my body was an instrument to help other people's bodies heal. I didn't know what was happening. And so I could go through a whole birth without a mother telling me anything, no feedback. And I would just be like, oh, I'm going to rub her calf.
Mm.
Oh, her hips. I'm going to rub her hips. I'm going to hold her hand. I'm going to hug her husband. I'm going to squeeze her really tight because she needs the release. I'm going to touch her toes. It would be the weirdest thing because I'd go through a whole birth, no feedback whatsoever, like, oh,
You were
thank you,
already
or
taking
yes.
care of their needs before they even knew them.
They didn't even know.
Yeah.
And then at the after, like the prenatal, and I do prenatal meetings and I do postpartum meetings. And at the postpartum meeting, over and over again, women, and they still say this to me, but they say, you did what I needed before I could even ask. And they'd say, I never had to tell you anything because you just did what I needed you to do.
Mm.
And I was listening to that feedback and not knowing how I was doing that for years. Like, you knew when to hand me water. Like, because I was thirsty. So I figured you were thirsty. Um, I didn't know what was happening.
So when did
And
you start
then
realizing that the powers, the gifts that you have are actually gifts, that not everyone has them? Because that's another thing, right? We think that if we have something, then everyone else
then
needs
everybody
something,
must
right? Like
everybody must be able
I
to do
feel it.
that.
Yeah, yeah. So when did it become clearer to you that maybe you're like gifted? Maybe this is something that other people don't have, and you can be proud of it, and that makes you even more special.
Somewhere in 2015, I was struggling with my reoccurring back pain again. And
Mm.
my chiropractor, who I was visiting weekly or twice a week, she looked at me and she said, there is nothing wrong with your back.
Mm.
There's nothing for me to even adjust. I think you're an empath. I think that you are sensing pain in your body instead of letting your heart and your soul and your gut feel it. You're taking it on your body.
Mm. Okay.
Well, I went home and I looked up empath, and I was steeped in the church at the time, and this sounded like witchcraft to me. I looked up some of the definitions and what makes
So you were
people.
like, hell yeah, I'm going there.
No,
At the time.
no, I
But
didn't dare.
Yeah.
I didn't dare talk about it. I didn't even dare go there. I could not let my mind go there,
Yeah,
but I
you were
had this
already
new,
programmed that this would probably cost you something very, if not life, then something definitely, there will be a severe punishment for something like that.
I would not be accepted in my current community if I talked about this thing that I could do. So I would talk about it with people who weren't at my church, and I would never talk about it with anybody inside my church.
Mm.
I had my fourth child in 2016. 2017, I had what I lovingly call the year of the throw up. And I was throwing up for no diagnosable reason. And I saw all the doctors and did all the diets. I was throwing up constantly. Like the littlest thing could throw me off. Just stuff that shouldn't make you throw up, like fruit, like a piece of cantaloupe made me throw up once. So what was that? Like what was happening in my body? I went through that year, and at the end of that year is when I decided that I was making everyone's life worse. And I spent about 2 months thinking that if I just wasn't in my family could do better without me. And that 2 months slipped very easily into suicide ideation and a plan. And then I came up with a plan for how to remove myself so I wouldn't be a burden, is how I was thinking. That my family could somehow do better without me, because I was so sick and I had no purpose. I couldn't
And
really,
no support by the sound of it. That
I didn't have, and my then husband, he missed a lot of work, and he had to do a lot of the house stuff, and then he had to take over quite a bit of stuff. So I was also getting in the way of his business and his, I was just a mess. My parents lived in a different state at the time. My brother and sister-in-law, they were underwater with kids too. And I just didn't have the support. And it was a week and a half before Thanksgiving. I woke up that morning and I enacted my plan, and I had I don't remember how many steps, but I had, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 steps. And I don't remember that day until I was on the last step. I was going to drop off all my other kids were at school, and my youngest, I was going to drop off with my sister-in-law, and then I was going to go home and do it. I was going to complete the list. I'd gathered the materials. I had everything I needed. And then my littlest, I was on the way to her house, and my littlest from the back seat said, "I love you, mommy. I love you, mommy. I love you." And it was like my soul came back in my body. Like I had been disassociated the entire morning, and I just froze. He'll never know me. He's 2.5. He'll never know me. My other little kids will barely have memories of me. They won't even know who I am. My oldest kid is going to think it's because of him. He's going to blame himself. I didn't drop him off because he's all of a sudden my life insurance. If he's in the car with me, I'm not going to hurt myself. I drove home. I shut off the car. I sat in the driveway. I called my husband. I got a couple days off, and then Thanksgiving, I hosted Thanksgiving. My parents were staying at my house. I hosted Thanksgiving. It was like nothing had ever happened. 2019, I tore my MCL snow skiing, and that's when I finally got the 6 weeks that I needed to heal. Because I had a physical injury, people brought me food and took my children and helped me with laundry, which is what I needed 6 months before. I needed to go to the hospital, and I needed psychiatric medication, and I needed psychotherapy, and I needed people to help me with my kids for a little bit while I got back going. But I finally got the break I needed 6 months later. And then another 3 months after that is when my entire life got turned upside down. So I had a rough few years. I'm alive, but I was clinging to my life at that point. At the end of, July in 2019, I had my 20-year class reunion.
I know it's fun.
It was fun. And I had a major trigger at my class reunion. I felt like I was on fire. I just felt like the world lit me on fire. And I was reminded of, for the first time since I was probably 15, 16, 17, I thought about my rape for the first time in 21, 22 years. I had shoved it down so deep that it wasn't even in my front conscious.
That's how
then
coping mechanisms and defense mechanism work. It will protect
and yeah, and I was able to build this really beautiful life because I had just shoved it down deep.
Yeah.
And my body was taking on the punishment. My body was taking it for me. But it all of a sudden came out of my body, and it was raging fire. And I spent months just trying to wrap my head around what had happened, but I was doing it within the frame of the church. And I wasn't getting anywhere, and I was frustrated. And then I destroyed.
People in the church were trying to help you.
No, I didn't tell anybody.
So, so you were still trying to kind of figure this out by yourself.
Yes, I was doing it by myself. The blind leading the blind over here. I was just trying to lead myself through it.
I was going to do it better. I don't need any help. All of those things
I will do it myself. I'll do it myself.
Yes.
And then, not to go into too many details because it's a public format and I don't want anyone to feel embarrassed.
I'm already like, all right, we're going there too as well. Okay, Becky. I'm all here for it. You know that I love you. You know that this guest talks. I'm just gonna have to put like a trigger warning at the beginning of the episode that I should have. But this is, sorry to interrupt, but this is we need to talk about those things. Those things happen all the time, and to all the women that it happens, I think the first thing is like, you don't think that it will happen to you, because even though you hear it everywhere that it happens, somehow you feel like, oh, it just happens to other people. They probably did something wrong to deserve this, or they didn't. They weren't cautious enough, or you don't see yourself as someone that it can happen to. And then when it happens, then you're like, oh, well, I can't tell anyone because now they're going to blame me. Now there's like all of this stuff. And the more we talk about it, the more we just, it's not to normalize it, because this shit needs to stop.
Right.
Because how about men start taking responsibility for what they are doing rather than women take all the blame? And we ask them 100 questions before you even look at the man and be like, well, what was he fucking doing over there? Why did he think it's his to take? Why don't we ask those questions? 20 years later, we haven't changed as much, even with all those,
I know.
It's changing, it's getting better, it's changing. But I think for women, us women, the more we connect with other women that had this experience, the more we can learn that it is not our fault, that it was never our fault, that the shame was never ours to carry, that there is support available, that our parents don't need to know, that your life's not going to change. All those fears, all this programming, all this guilt, everything that is this causes in you, it's universal. It's collective, because
it is.
And we're clearing this. It's being cleared right now. So it's a beautiful time that we live in. So thank you so much for opening up about it, because I think this is a very, very important thing to talk about. So there was a trigger. There was a physical trigger that kind of took you back to the thing that you buried deep down. And this 20-year reunion was just like this flash from the past, be like, hey, Becky, we are not pretending that things didn't happen. So what helped you start healing? Because then I hear that you were trying to do this by yourself, but then did you at some
Mhm.
point speak to someone or found some work, or was it maybe shaman work that helped you? Like, what actually helped you healing apart from just, you know?
Well, first, before I did the healing, I did the hurting.
Mm, mm,
And I lashed out and I hurt my husband very badly.
mm.
Um, and
You had a rage that needed to be expressed.
yes,
There's that.
yes, I did. And I had a grand rebellion against the church as
Mm,
well. And so now we're moving into 2020, and I'm having this grand rebellion where I am claiming my body and I'm claiming my freedom. I'm claiming my femininity. I'm claiming all of the things that I lost. That, well, in the
oh,
process, I was
yeah,
hurting my
yeah, of
husband
course, of
very
course. It
much.
didn't
And
just like it happened. Oh well, today I am a sensual woman. Here I go. It's, yes, it's not
I
exactly.
mean, there's a right way to reclaim your power and there's a wrong way. And I did it the wrong way for about 18 months and it destroyed my marriage.
Mm,
And I had to give up my marriage, my high school love, my forever partner. I had to give up
mm.
that whole concept that I was going to be with my forever partner. And my ex-husband and I were best friends and we were good partners and we were good business partners. Um, I had to give all, I blew it all up and I had to spend the next 2 years, 2.5 years figuring out why I did that and healing the root of that because it had nothing to do with him. It had everything to do with me. And, he didn't deserve that pain. Nobody deserves to be hurt.
Yeah.
And I mean, I did a lot of hurting. I hurt him a lot. And in the process of peeling away from the church, I started to look at the programming and the roots and what I had been taught and why I felt like I had to reclaim anything in the first place. Why did I have to heal? Why did I have to find the root of it? And in 2020, I found a therapist that finally could help me towards the end of the year, 2020 and into 2021. And then my divorce was finalized in March of 21. And then, or no, March of 22. And I was able to find some clarity through my spirituality.
Mm,
And it was extremely difficult for me to peel away the religion and learn about my spirit as being bigger than religion. Not myself being bigger than religion, but my spirit being connected and the
something
oneness
bigger. Yeah.
is bigger than the systems of religion that we were taught. And separating the two was very, very difficult for me because I would dabble in, let's say I would, I learned how to meditate and I learned how to do yoga in a meditative way. And I learned how to visualize in my third eye instead of my mind's eye and these different things. But then I would still have these moments where like I would be in a meditation and I would talk and Jesus would be there. And
Mm.
I'd be like, get the fuck out. What are you doing here?
Yeah, because you associated. We taught that one religion is better than the other, or there's just one God and it needs to look a certain way
Mhm.
depending what religion.
Yeah.
Whereas
And then Jesus would like, when I'd be like, get the fuck out of here, Jesus. And Jesus would be like, dude, you don't know me.
yeah.
You've been taught this thing about me. It's all wrong. Here's what I want you to know about me. And I would just be like, okay, sorry, I didn't mean to yell at you, Jesus. Same time, same place tomorrow. My grandmother came to me. I started meeting like spirit guides and people that were like, I don't know who this person is. Is this an entity, like a goddess or a god? Or is this like an ancestor? Or like, who is this? What is this? And I started just being able to take the messages into my real life. And wherever they were coming
if they
from,
appeared to pass on a message that you were
right,
ready to,
and wherever, right, and whether it was like I was out on a run, or I was in a meditation, or I was asleep at night, like whatever these things were, whatever these people, spirits were, long story short, they're you and me and all of us. So it's me talking to me about me.
Yeah, we're gonna confuse a lot of people now, but a lot of people will be like, hell yeah, finally we're talking about it. Like I'm already like, yes, let's talk about my favorite topic.
And that's really what led me to shamanism, was just being able to realize that there's no superiority in the systems that we were taught. That if I had been born on a different continent to a different family,
equality. Yes.
I would have had a different religious system. If I'd been born, even in a different city, I may have had a different take on Christianity.
So
in all of it, I just was starting to realize that I didn't have to be the personal condemner of all things, that I could actually be a unifier of oneness of all things.
So it was empowering, right? It was like
Very.
spirituality for me as well. Very confusing when it first started appearing for me, because I didn't have as much of a religious background as you, but I had to go to the church, and then I kind of stopped going at, I don't know, age of 15 or something. I remember just telling my mom, it's like, I'm not going to go on a Sunday. Just stop making me go. It's like, what's the point? They don't want us anyway. It's not good for us. Like, what's the whole point of it? Like, priests are there for themselves. They just want money or whatever, Like, I knew that there's something bad with the system. I didn't want to go there. I didn't want to do it. I was like, this is not helping me in any way. But then I just stopped believing in any higher power, because if the priest is the extension of God, then what is God? If this is what you do, if your pupils are doing this, corrupted, molesting children, and all that shit that no one talks about and pretend it doesn't happen,
I don't want it.
Sorry, but I don't want to be a part of it, right?
Yeah.
And then I was all alone my whole life, until a few years ago when, my uncle came back and some other things started happening, and I was like, oh, okay, what's happening here? Very confusing. But
yeah, it is very confusing. It's really, really hard.
Yes, it's
to not just throw the baby away with the bathwater. Like, it's very, very difficult to be like, my children attend church with their father. And a lot of people are like, how can you let him take your kids to church? And in my mind, I'm like, they are on a journey. My eyes are open.
Yes.
And I talk to them about all places that they go, church, school, sports. I talk to them about all the adults in their life. And if there's any time that they're ever feeling unsafe, that they need to talk to me about it. And that goes for sports and school and church and all the places they go. I don't discriminate. I don't say, oh, you're at church, you're safe. Or just like I wouldn't say, oh, you're at school, you're safe. They all have background checks.
Because you have this religion or that the religion. Like, exactly, you have freedom of choice as long as you stay kind and you don't, do any other person harm. Because
so I realized that
then exactly, you have the right.
My my children are independent, spiritual beings as well, that
Mhm.
have their own learning that they are going to go through.
Yeah. Well,
And it is
exactly.
okay. It is okay for them. I have
Yeah.
made safety for them,
Mm.
and their dad loves them very much and holds their safety very dear as well. So they have safety in the things that they participate in
Yeah.
because they have us, you know. So I I do cringe sometimes when they talk about certain things, but they also have the freedom to ask questions. I did not have the freedom to challenge the teachings or to ask questions. So they will come home sometimes and they'll be like, you know what, I was thinking about this thing, and how can God do this and be this and say this, because that's three different things. And I'm like, that's a very interesting thing, let's talk about it. So they can ask questions, they can believe what they are led to believe, and I'll continue teaching them no non-harm. And even if it's with my own life example of, when you harm people, you lose relationships. And
Well,
that's,
it goes, there's a karma as well. So whatever you put out there is gonna come back
Mhm.
to you one way or the other.
Yeah,
So there's
yeah.
all that stuff. But I think that's a beautiful testament to your growth as well,
Mhm.
the way you're raising your kids, the way you're giving them what you haven't been given. That's all that we can do for the next
Mhm.
generation. That's why we're
Yeah,
here to learn those
yeah,
lessons and
yeah,
take the
yeah.
wisdom out of it, because
Mhm.
everything that happened to us is for our growth, is for our
Yeah,
empowerment, is for us to
yeah.
finally see, like you said, we are all one. So you harm
Mhm.
yourself, that's going to harm your kids as well, that's going to harm your husband,
Yes.
that's going to harm other
Yep.
people. Where you go, you
Yep.
harm someone else, eventually it's going to come back to you. Sometimes it's instant, sometimes you will wait, but no one should think they're invisible or invincible. No one should think that they're better than someone else. You may have different
Mhm.
resources, you may have different
Yeah.
experiences, but that doesn't make you a better person. That doesn't make you
Right.
anything more. We are literally
Right.
all equal, but we still don't live in the world that behaves this way. But
Right.
you and I and so many other people are on this path. The awakening
Mhm.
path is
Mhm.
really awakening to the truth that I am you and you are me and we are all one. Exactly that. However, for those
Yes.
that don't know yet, they'll be like, what the fuck are they talking about? Which would be me a few years ago or a few months even ago.
Oh, I know. I know.
But it's through your own personal journey that you
Mhm.
but that brings me to the point that that's why it's so important to look into your wounding and to look into
Yes.
your lesson
Yes.
that you haven't learned yet, because that is where you will find those answers. And whether you will find it through shamanism, spirituality, maybe you will become a Buddhist, maybe you will be a
Mhm.
different religion, like, or you just become whatever you will decide to become.
Mhm.
It's for you, it is your path,
Yeah.
because maybe this
Mhm.
is part of your message, maybe this is a part of your purpose, and this is what you're meant to be helping other people
Mhm.
with. There's so many people in the world that
Yeah.
obviously everyone, we all have something to contribute
Mhm.
with our gifts, but you're not going to find your gifts, you're not going to know why
Yeah.
are you here until you make peace with your past and with your
Mhm.
wounding, and kind of like have an understanding, and
Yeah.
most people let go of that shame. And especially as women, we need
Mhm.
to let go of the shame and we need to
Mhm.
let go of the guilt, because those two are like the lowest vibrations, and we are literally
Yeah.
born into the world that is already
Yeah.
guilt and shame, because you need to, there's a just constriction after constriction and limitation, what we should be doing and how we should behave.
Well, yeah,
Mm,
I would also add to that the triad, the guilt, the shame, and the fear.
yes.
And and fear and shame really drove my ship for a really long time.
Yeah.
And the shame and the fear coming from the church and from my parents, from my family,
Mm.
was just a constant. It was like a hurricane all the time. And now I have faced shame and I have faced guilt. And I just had another round facing guilt about
Oh,
what I
hello
did to my
levels.
ancestors. Well, hello.
That was deeper layer.
So I
Yeah,
just,
it is in the facing, right? It's in the facing rather than in the avoiding, because a lot of us are avoiding looking at the darker sides of
yes,
us because, well,
yes.
obviously, because we fear what we're going to find out over there,
Mhm.
or we fear what's going to happen to the
Mhm.
reality as we know it, because the reality
Yeah,
as we know it will collapse. That will definitely
yeah,
happen, but it will collapse so that you can see more truth, so that you can love yourself,
right,
so that you can finally see that there's a everything happens for a reason, even the darkest
right.
moments. They were there
Yeah.
for you to either clean that lineage, maybe like
Mhm.
we all have generational trauma to heal.
Yep.
And it's what happened to you was so that
Mhm.
you can finally clear it. It's happened to your ancestors, probably more
Mhm.
than one. So sadly, it then happened to you so that you
Mhm.
can be now the person that's going to
Yes.
be, okay, this fucking stops with me. I am not
Mhm.
going to give it to another generation. And the only way to not
Right.
give it to another generation is to face it,
Mhm.
acknowledge it, accept it, heal it, and decide that love
Yeah.
is the answer at the end of the day. And
Yeah.
equality is what's ruling rather than hatred, because you could have easily be gone and be like shaming other
Mhm.
people, doing
Right.
doing even more harm. And I love
Mhm.
that you said that you actually did that at the beginning, because this
Mhm.
rage that was
I
awakened,
did.
that was suppressed for 20 years, it had to come out
Mhm.
of your body. So you did the
Mhm.
best you could at the time. But then with that, you understood, oh, actually, this is also not the answer. And what's happening,
Right.
the wars and everything else, is because we just so fucking, oh, the hatred,
Just go back and
we're gonna
forth.
show them, it's like, no, stop, this is not the answer. Love is the
Mhm.
answer, kindness is the answer. Because if you're hating
Mhm.
someone else, you're hating yourself. Like, see this connection. Once you
Mhm.
see it, you cannot
Mhm.
unsee it. And that's
Yeah.
why working on yourself is always the most
Mhm.
important, because then
Mhm.
it ripples into everyone, your
Right.
family, your kids, your parents, your grandparents, if they're still
Yeah.
alive, or even, the lineage, the ancestors that, are not here. They're still,
Right.
we're clearing that.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. It's been a lot of, oh no, my, hello.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah, I'm here. I'm here. I'm here.
my my phone shut off because it said low
Oh, there
battery.
is there. Oh,
Um,
okay.
it's been, the work is really, it is circular.
Yes.
It does come and go. And there are times when I'm working on the shame. Um, and there are times that I'm working on the guilt of what I did to my marriage
Mm,
and to my ex-husband.
mm.
And there are times that I'm working on the fear, what's going to happen next and where am I headed? And I have just a different understanding of the universe and how the universe is built, that when the layers come up, I have a trust that I can just fall and I can just look at that
Right.
shame and I can say, yeah, you did some pretty nasty things to your ex-husband.
But you're
You
still
did.
worthy and lovable and deserving
And it is,
of life. And then, and you now understand as well that the reason you did those things, it didn't come out of nowhere. It didn't come because you're a bad person. It is not your identity. You can
right.
so that's also a message to anyone out there struggling with this identity. Maybe you've
Mhm.
done a bad thing and now you've assumed that, oh, you're just a terrible person, so you don't deserve a better life because you're such a shit person. Whatever you did, it probably came from your wounding, came from whatever
Mhm.
you known. You probably have been brought up in an
Mhm.
environment that only showed you that type of love or that type of behavior. So I do believe now as well that we do the best as we can with the knowledge that we
Mhm.
have, with the lessons that we've learned. And, it's hard for people that haven't done this work on themselves to understand. But I mean,
Right.
I'm looking at you, I'm looking at all the beautiful people, I'm looking at myself as well. And I see how, I wasn't as loving and accepting and compassionate like I am right now. But I
Mhm.
fucking love this about myself, because
Yeah.
if I'm so much more compassionate towards you, I know it's because
Yes.
I am actually more compassionate towards myself. That doesn't mean I
Mhm.
think I'm perfect. That doesn't mean I think I never done any mistakes. It just means that we are all flaws. We have flaws and we're here to constantly evolve and learn those lessons and alchemize that pain into something more
Mhm.
beautiful. And that's how we bring the change.
I'm,
Not by standing
you
in the
know,
shadows and blaming and
before 2019, I I like to describe it that I was on a crystal pedestal, and I lived in self-righteousness, and I lived in this place where I really could just judge people
Mm.
like, oh, she's a horrible human. Look at that. That's a terrible person. How dare he do that to his wife? How dare she do that to her husband? Oh, that's just
I love your
awful.
honesty. Thank you.
I was arrogant. I didn't know jack about the actual world.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't live in authenticity, and I was so judgmental that I could not, I mean, I couldn't believe it when people would have troubles and when they would sin, like, oh, they're just terrible.
Yeah, because you're such a
And
good
after
citizen and a child of God or whatever you
I
they
I
accepted me.
walked the
Yeah,
walk.
yeah,
I
yeah,
walked the walk. There were lots of people that just came to church and they were nice at church, and then the
yeah,
rest of the week they were just whatever. I was not that. I was
yeah,
sincerely,
yeah.
I was bought in completely to the system of righteousness.
But I'd love
And
to
I
say that. I would love to touch upon that because judgment is a
oh,
reflection of you, right? Like if
yeah.
you're not judging as much right now, right? Like if you
Well,
judge
yeah,
someone,
that's
there's probably a part of you that you are
yeah,
judging right now. Not it's
yeah,
not even about them. It's about something in you that you're judging, and you're just projecting it. It's all everything is
yeah,
in. So if you're judging, if I'm gonna go and I was like, oh, Becky was this and that, well, there's probably something in me that I either want what you have
right.
already, or I'm like,
Mhm.
I don't, there's a reason. So judgment is
Well,
just
now I see people in their duality. I
yes,
see people are made up of the same stuff, and we are all made up of the same stuff.
yes,
We
yeah,
are all living in duality, which is why, singular salvation systems don't feel good. And that's why Christian women are walking around now. They're like, I'm broken, I'm broken, I'm broken, I'm broken, because we we live in a system that is not singular. We live in duality. We're made of the same stuff. I have just as much righteousness as I do unrighteousness. I am this. And when you try to say, well, you can only be one way, you can
yes,
only be this thing, then
mm,
we're constantly living in this tumultuous, I can't fix it, I can't do it, I can't make it better, because we don't function like that. Humans function in dark and we function in light. We function
there's more
in
than one aspect to every one of us, so you can't just
and
be
we all function
yeah,
in this same system. We're made of the same stuff.
mm-hmm.
And I can't look, honestly, cannot look at another human being right now and think gross. When I look at another person, I think she's made of the same stuff I am. And I allowed my darkness to be the prime ruler of my life. Like I allowed that, if you want to call it bad behavior, but all that stuff coming out,
So you know
I
that it
allowed it.
teaches it's there to be
Mhm.
the light needs to
The
shine on over the darkness, right? You need
mhm.
to be like, what is there? What is there that I can then use for good? Because
Right.
it's a lot of things to unpack there, but that's probably another podcast episode on that one.
My children just handed me a note asking if we have any chocolate chips in the house.
Okay.
So
So you
let
might,
me, she gave me a note so I can respond.
okay. It's okay. We might be wrapping up anyway. I think we're over an hour.
But
Probably your children
but
are
where I was
nanny,
going with
nanny,
that
just
was
stop. Yeah,
where I was going with that is I
yeah,
think that's something that shamanism taught me, is
yeah.
that we all have this ability to access the deeper realms of ourselves. And we all have the ability to be strong and find the deep part of ourselves. We can ask ourselves for healing. We can ask ourselves for guidance. We can ask our higher self for those things.
Hmm.
We all have deep down, we have these contracts and we have these caverns, and we have to excavate them sometimes, which means you have to admit that they're there. You have to find it. Even the things that you have buried deep down, deep down that are making us sick. We have a very sick.
Denial, I will repeat because I said it before, is not a great coping mechanism. It served you. It might have served you for a long time, but it is
Right.
not going to last. It is
Yeah.
not meant to last.
And when we
It's
go down
yeah.
deep into those caverns and we pick out those things and we look at it, we can actually say, I see you. I know you're there. I'm not going to be sick anymore because of this. I'm giving it away and it's okay. It's going to be okay. And we can actually move to a place of healing. We can move into a place where we don't have fear. We can move into a
Acceptance.
place where we look at our shame, and I promise you will survive the journey. You will survive the journey of looking at your shame and your guilt and your fear. And it's okay to look at those things and say, I can make it through this. I can make it through this. I can admit that I've been hurtful. I can admit that I've been victorious. I've been the victor. I've been the persecutor. I've been the savior. I've been the villain. And every single time I come away and my soul understands me more deeply and I can heal through those things. And we don't have to get stuck in any of those cycles. We can move through it, and it takes all of your body centers. We can't think our way out. We can't feel our way out. We can't do our way out. We have to do all three. We have to have the triad of, I know that I've done something. I feel guilty about it. I know that I can have the emotion and love and apologize and do the thing, and I can do what I need to do, and I can move those things through, because we are all going to operate sometimes at our lowest. And that's okay, because you can do the work. And sometimes things happen to us that are pretty dark, and sometimes we create things that are pretty dark. But when we look at it, we can move through it, and it's healing, and we can find that center, that peace, that I have taken my soul and I've taken it seriously and I've listened to it, and I'm not going to ignore it anymore. I can take my body, I can listen to it, I'm not going to ignore it anymore. I can take my thoughts, I can listen to it, I'm not going to ignore it anymore. And I'm going to show love and compassion, and I'm going to move through that, shine the light on it, because we all have so much that we try to hide or bury. And we can actually take those things out, because they're making us sick. They're making us sick. We can extract those things and we can move through it. And it takes a lot of work. And then you take a break.
We go on holiday and you dance a lot.
and you can be at a stopping point. Oh, there's a cardinal outside my window. You can be at a stopping point, and you can let yourself breathe. Take a bath, take a walk, take a 6 months off. It's fine, because we cannot process everything all at once.
Exactly. And I mean, especially
you have
if you've
to
been
rest
through a lot, then it will come in stages, it will come in levels.
Yep.
And it most definitely doesn't mean that until you healed, God knows, like, get rid of the idea that you're ever going to be completely healed, because you healed your thing, then you're going to get the ancestral generational, like, there's going to be more stuff coming, so don't worry about it. You will
it's gonna be okay.
But it doesn't mean that you need to be miserable. It doesn't mean that you can't move forward as you're doing this stuff. Those things are meant to be happening. That's what was stopping me a long time before I only now I'm really like becoming this coach, because I've told myself that I can't be the coach that I know that I can be already until I heal more, until my leg heals more. Yeah, that was stopping me, because I was like, well, how
we all do that.
Help people when I'm
we
still
all do
suffering with this or suffering? And obviously there is a certain level, and especially if you're like depending on your work, but the more now I'm like, okay, well, well, I am at the better place, obviously, with my healing as well. So
Mhm.
that is much better. But I also understand that that doesn't. I don't consider myself healed. Like whatever's going to come up, I just know that I know how
Right.
to handle. I have the tools. I know where to go to find out what I need to do, or I know that I can just give myself some grace, or that I can take some days off and take care of whatever is popping up. Because
Mhm.
now I know how to navigate the waters, as you say. Sometimes there's going to be, you know, smooth sailing, and sometimes there's gonna be a fucking storm, and you're gonna be like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
take the week off. We are
Yeah.
not doing anything this week, you know, because
Yeah.
you don't know.
Yeah.
But still, you are beautiful. You are still you. That doesn't mean anything about you. It just means you processing more. You're going through it more. Like that's, we signed up for it. They say, right? You all
That's
chose.
what they say.
That's what they say. We fucking sign up for it. So just go with the flow, you know, like have the support system, know that you are safe. You will be. It wouldn't happen to you if you wouldn't be able to handle it. And you can talk about it. You can find people, you can find the support system. Hello. So, you know, I'm probably going to be finishing the conversation so you can come back to your
Okay.
children.
No,
Um,
it's okay. They know that I'm working and
yeah.
it's
Well,
okay.
mhm.
This is my miniature shaman who knows.
Oh yeah. Oh, maybe that's why he's giving you a hug. He knows that you need one.
He knows. He knows that, you know,
Yeah.
every time I share my story, you know, it's does bring up an element of fear. It brings out the shame again. It tempts me to be guilty again. And
Mm.
I do go through cycles of what did I do? I just went through a big one. That Mercury retrograde we just went through.
You can also always blame the planets.
I just had like a whole new appreciation or disapproval of what I did. And I
Yeah.
had to go right back through it again. So,
Yeah, because
but
again, I think your lesson right now is the self-love, and really anchor
yeah,
into this.
yep.
I just love myself, whatever I discover about myself. That was
Mhm.
a big thing that I've been learning in the last year. And, you know,
Yeah.
I'm happy to be thinking that I am, you know, much better now. But who knows what's the next wave that gonna hit me with
If
what?
I if I stayed in the grief and the shame
Yeah.
of what I did, I would not be a functional adult.
Yeah, you can't stay in the low vibrations for long. Like they're not meant to be there. You're not meant to be
Mhm.
in them. You are meant to feel them.
Mhm.
But that's the important part.
Yeah.
You are meant to,
Yeah.
we are the ones that we will feel deeply. We feel deeply. I think we, all of us that are doing this work, are empaths one way or the other. We feel, or highly sensitive,
Mhm.
or however you call it, because the amount of grief and the amount of suffering and the amount of the feelings that I felt in the last 3 years, it's like 100% more than what I felt in the 37 years before it. So at the beginning, I was like, oh, okay, so I must have been suppressing a lot. But then I was like, no, I think this is more. I think this is, you know, the collective. This is the, and that was confusing at the beginning. And at the time, I didn't know. I thought just like, I'm just collapsing. This is the meltdown. This is what people say when you like go like, because obviously I didn't tell anyone either, right? But now I'm like, oh, I just had to feel it. I had to feel it because I was releasing it. It had to leave my body. I have been gifted with such an empowering, with such a beautiful, deep feelings.
Mhm.
Because, but I think we all have those feelings. We just
Mhm.
suppress them, and because I have been
Yeah,
suppressing them for so
you
long,
do.
when the knee happened, I was just like, I don't want to be holding anything anymore inside, because it's
Yeah.
honestly, I knew immediately the knee happened because exactly every single thing that I did with my life before it has led me to
Mhm.
that way. Had I
Yeah.
not suppressed my emotions, had I healed my trauma sooner, had I done this, perhaps I wouldn't be here. But not in a way to blame myself, but rather in a more empowering way that, okay, there is a different way. Let me just go and
Mhm.
feel. Let me connect with my body instead of take it for granted. Let me
Yeah.
understand, why am I acting a certain way? Why do I let some people treat me the way I know I don't want to be treated? Why, you know, because there's a reason for everything, right? So as soon as I open to, about, you know, not everyone needs to go through a lot of things to come to that decision, but many of
Yeah.
us are still at this point. We have skeletons in our closets that we're so scared to open because
Mhm.
time has passed. We are scared of the beliefs that we had.
Yeah.
We lock that in because that's the thing. You are going to come back to that person that you were the 15-year-old, the 19-year-old, the whatever the hell year old that you were, that you locked that thing in, and those feelings that you're gonna feel, they're gonna be the feelings of that age. And that is scary as shit. But once you process this, it's like the most empowering and liberating feeling that I am so grateful I get to do, because that's why, you know, I'm lighter, I'm brighter, because my soul, there was so much I was carrying,
Yeah.
so much you were
Yeah.
carrying for
Yeah.
years, decades, and now you're just like, oh, okay, whatever's happening, I'm good. Like that, just we gotta deal with it.
Well, and it should be mentioned, like, this has been with me all along. I've always been free-spirited,
Yeah,
positive. I've always been the person that like could understand other people
yes,
and what they were going through and why they did things and walk in other people's shoes. It's been there all along. And so if you're afraid to take that step because you're afraid of what is going to come of it, it's already in you.
yes,
It's
you already
already
have
there.
everything that you need. Yes.
You do
But
not
you're
have to
actually
reinvent
not
the wheel.
seeing it because you're not doing the work yet. So you don't
Right.
see gifts, you don't see your power, you don't see
Right.
how much you have to offer to the world, because I think that's what's the most important here. The way we do, the reason we're doing all this healing for ourselves is so that then we can unpack our gifts and reach our own potential, and then go and do
Yeah.
things that actually in service of others. And exactly, and that's like the most, and having this purpose is like the best thing that can happen to me, you know, like
Yeah. Yeah.
nothing else
I
matters.
love it.
I know every time I wake up, I'm gonna bring something to the world. Like I'm here for more than just myself. I'm here to, you know, and there is still the logical part of me that's like, Maggie, what the fuck do you think? Who the fuck do you think you are? You know, the old inner critic sometimes will come in with a visit, but I'm like, bitch, please, not today. We're not doing this. You know, but it's a process. It's a process, and yes, I love that you're encouraging others as well, because it's how the world's gonna be a better place. I'm gonna just go to my favorite topic again, because it's all about bettering humanity, right? It's all about so that
Yeah.
we can create a better future for ourselves and for future generations. You have kids, you want them to live in a better world, not a worse one.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
and we know everywhere it's seen now that the way we've been doing it's not working. So that's why we're all healing. That's why we're all coming back to love, so that it just can be a much nicer planet to live on. So I think that's a beautiful way to finish our conversation. But let me know how if anyone would be like to be in touch with you, or maybe would like to work with you, what are the where they can find you. I'll link everything under the video, but what sort of offerings do you do, or what sort of work, like how can people experience your magic?
I am able to do shaman sessions online, just
Okay.
with a video call. We can do video call. Um, and it usually starts really small and we work up to the bigger things. So it can take several sessions. And then pretty much you just graduate and then you can do it for yourself. So you don't have to get stuck in a loop of having a healer.
Yes.
The idea is to teach you how to free yourself. And then if you need assistance, a bump, then I can help you do that too. But
Yeah.
my doula website is lincolndoula.com if you are expecting a baby and need help with that in my area. That's a local thing I can do.
Well, unless you can
And then
fly
my
back
email,
here for months, but
my regular email is my name,
yeah.
Becky Sherman at gmail.com. And you can always,
Yeah, we'll link that. We'll link that all under the video. So Becky,
that's
thank
how
you
you can
so
find
much.
me.
Yes, thank you so
Love
much.
you.
Thank you for being so open and honest with your story. I know it's going to make a huge impact, because those are important conversations that we've been having today, and you just presented your story in such a, you always have this beautiful nurturing and calming manner. You're a grounding presence for everyone. We always like hang on to Becky if you're ever anxious, and you have Becky around, you just go and you hold on to her and she'll calm you. Yes, yes. So you're an excellent doula as well. But I know, like I could feel, and I think it was just beautiful that you opened up so much and shared your story, parts of you that a lot of people, may have as well, but they may be too afraid to speak to anyone about it. So again, that's just our encouragement for anyone out there that is struggling with anything in their past, fearing what can happen if they open that door, that it is just obviously find a support system, but it is safe to go there, and it is needed for your development and for your inner peace. You're going to be so much more at peace with yourself, with your body, with everything when you unpack your past. So we are highly encouraging anyone to process whatever they haven't processed yet. And I, Maggie, as a host, want to just thank everyone for tuning in, and till next time. Bye, Becky. Love you. Bye.